Alright, hello, and welcome back to another reading stream. Today we're going to be continuing in A Study in Scarlet, hit by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The very first Sherlock Holmes book that was ever published. We'll be making our way through that series if this goes over well. So, that means I need to grab my book. That's the wrong button. I'm looking for this one. All right. Make that go away. There we go. All right, I got my book. Oh, hi, Fleecy. You're tapping in? Well, welcome. I'm glad you could stop by. I was just about to get started. How you doing? Timed it perfectly then. All right. So last time we read this, we had to cut ourselves short because I had a thing I needed to do, but I was late to it anyways. Sag. But we'll be picking up at chapter 4. So I hope to put on a good show. Because I notice it says you're a first-time chatter, meaning I have to put on a good performance. Aw. That's so sweet. Got my water all filled up. Take a swing before we start. Ah, it splashed in my eye. Son of a bitch. I lowered it too quickly. Alright. Now with that embarrassing flip, it wants to blind you. No, it's just regular water. Stop it. Alright. Chapter 4. What John Rashan had to tell. It was 1 o'clock when we left number 3. He lodged. I'm very bad at some of these names. I'm going to warn you flat out. This is a very British book. Lauderstone Gardens. Sherlock Holmes led me to the nearest telegraph office, where he dispatched a long telegram. He then hailed a cab and ordered the driver to take us to the address given to us by Lestrade. There is nothing like first-hand evidence, he remarked. As a matter of fact, my mind is entirely made up upon the case, but still, we may as well learn all there is to be learned. You amaze me, Holmes, said I. Surely you're not as sure as you pretend to be at all the particulars which you gave. There is no room for mistake, he answered. The very first thing which I observed on arriving there was that the cab had made 2 ruts with its wheels close to the curb. Now, up till last night, we had no rain for a week, so those wheels which left such a deep impression must have been there during the night. There were the marks of the horses' hooves, too, the outlines of ones which was far more clearly cut than that of the other 3, showing that was a new shoe, since the cab was there after the rain began, was not there at any time during the morning. I have Gregson word for that. It follows that it must have been during the night, and therefore that it brought those two individuals to the house. Hi, Cat. Welcome to the stream. Yep, we're doing a full reading stream today. That seems simple enough, said I. But how about the other man's height? Why, the height of the man, in 9 cases out of 10, can be told from the length of his stride. It's a simple calculation enough, though there is no use my boring you with figures. This man fell astride both on the clay outside and on the dust within. Then I had a way of checking my calculations. When a man writes on a wall, his instinct leads him to write about the level of his own eyes. Now, that writing was just about 6 feet from the ground. It was child's play. And his age? Well, if a man can stride 4.5 feet with the smallest effort, he can and be quite in the Sir and yellow. That was a breath of the puddle of the garden walk, which he had evidently walked across. Patent leather boots had gone round, and square toes had hopped over. There was no mystery about it at all. I'm simply applying to ordinary life a few of those prospects of observation and deduction which I had advocated in that article. Is there anything else that puzzles you? The fingernails and the trichopoli, I suggested. The writing on the wall was done with the man's fingers dipped in blood. My glass allowed me to observe that the plaster was slightly scratched in doing it, which would not have been the case if the man's nail had been trimmed. I gathered up some scattered ash from the floor. It was dark in color and flaky, such an ash as is only made by the trichopoli. I made a special study of the cigar ashes. In fact, I have a written monograph on the subject. I flatter myself that I have distinguished at a glance the ash of any known brand, either cigar or tobacco. It is such a detail that skilled detectives differ from that to Gregson and the straw type. And the full-hearted face? I asked. That was more of a daring shot, though I have no doubt that I am right. You must not ask me that at the present state of affairs. Sounds like Dracula Todoroki. Will you ever hear from one of my Dracula readings? I always made sure to give him. He was right. Always made sure to give him a very distinct way of talking. You at some point read Dracula? I actually have started reading Dracula. We've gotten up to chapter 7. Then I'll eventually, at one of these days, I'll be picking that back up. But I just when I went out on Thursday, usually go and see a bookstore, and as we were browsing, came across some classics, and I saw Sherlock Holmes, and I just had a spark of inspiration. They are admittedly mixed up in the VODs. The VODs that have it will have titles in them, but the VODs that currently have the readings of Dracula usually have something else before them. So I will admit it is a bit wonky to go looking for them. Dracula Todoroki can be have bread. Take all the bread you want. It will fuel the nutrients in your body so that I may take it. Anyways, onward and upward. Well, Anyways, I was saying I had a spark of inspiration when I saw that to read this on stream. I'm glad that could make you happy. Where was I? Here it is. I passed my hand over my brow. My head is in a whirl, I remarked. The more one thinks of it, the more mysterious it grows. How how came these two men, if there were two men, into an empty house? What has become of the cabman who drove them? How could one man compel another to take poison? Where did the blood come from? What was the object of the murderer? Or what was, yeah, it just says object instead of objective. That's so weird. These old books are weird. You're Catman. Since robbery had no part in it, how came in the woman's ring then? Above all, why should the second man write up the German word "rocher" before decamping? I confess that I cannot see any possible way of reconciling all these facts. My companion smiled approvingly. You sum up the difficulties of the situation scrutiny, and well. He said, there is much that is still obscured, though I have quite made up my mind on the main facts. As to poor Westard's discovery, it was a simple blind, and intended to put the police upon the wrong track by suggesting socialism and secret societies. It was done by a German. The A, if you notice, was printed somewhat after the German fashion. Now a real German invariably prints in the Latin characters, so that we may safely say that this was not written by one, but by a clumsy imitator, who overdid his part. Alright, wish him a happy birthday for me. And thanks for stopping by. I'm glad I didn't choose Frankenstein. And then since Kat liked Frankenstein and she has to go today. I also did a start on Frankenstein as well, Fleecy. I have 3 books going on for my reading streams. Anyway. Well, I'll have to get back around to it. I'll probably jump between the books as the fancy strikes me. Will you do Shakespeare at some point? I could. The very first thing I did before starting Dracula was warm up with The Raven, so I have that as a recording as well in the first Dracula recording. I haven't actually read Macbeth, so that might be a good opportunity to read Macbeth. I keep losing my place. I need to leave my cursor where it was. Gotta take all the opportunities to read Macbeth. Yeah, it was my freshman year language arts teacher. That's his favorite Shakespeare play. But because of the curriculum, we couldn't get around to it. I hear pretty much everyone dies by the end. I need to leave my cursor where it is so I don't lose my place so I can chat with y'all without losing my place. Yeah, sounds about right. Yes, okay, it is in the right place. He said thanks, Koi. Yeah, no worries. It was simply a ruse to divert It was simply a ruse to divert inquiry into a wrong channel. I'm not going to tell you much more of the case, Doctor. You know a conjurer gets no credit when once he has explained his tricks. If I showed you too much of the method of working, you will come to the conclusion that I am a very ordinary individual. I shall never do that, I answered. You have brought deduction as near an exact science as it ever will be brought in this world. My companion flushed with pleasure at my words, and the earnest way in which I uttered them. I had already observed that he was as sensitive to flattery on the score of his art as any girl could be of her beauty. I'll tell you one other thing, he said. I'm noticing my Sherlock Holmes is sounding like Antonio Banderas with a tinge of drag. Patent leathers and square toe came in the same cab, and they walked down the pathway together, as friendly as possible, arm in arm in all probability. When they got inside, they walked up and down the room, or rather, Patent leathers stood still, while Square Toes walked up and down. I could read all that in the dust. I could read that as he walked he grew more and more excited. That is shown by the increased length of his stride. He was talking all the while, and worked himself up, no doubt, into a fury. Then tragedy occurred. I've told you all I know myself now, for the rest is mere surmise and conjecture. We have a good working basis, however, on which to start. We must hurry up, for I want to go to Holland's concert to hear Norman Miranda this afternoon. This conversation had occurred while our cab had been threading its way through a long succession of dingy streets and dreary byways. In the dingiest and dreariest of them, our driver suddenly came to a stand. "What's all the call in there?" he said, pointing to a narrow slit in the line of dead-colored bricks. "You'll find me here when you come back." Aldi Court was not an attractive locality. The narrow passage led us into a quadrangle paved with flags, and lined by sordid dwellings. We picked our way among groups of dirty children, and through lines of discolored linen, until we came to number 46, the door of which was decorated with a small slip of brass, which read the name Rachan. That was engraved. On inquiry, we found the constable was in bed, and we were shown into a little front parlor to await his coming. He appeared presently, looking a little irritable at which being disturbed in his slumber. "I made the report to the office," he said. Holmes took a half-sovereign from his pocket and played with it pensively. "We thought we should like to hear it all from your own lips." Actually, I think I know the voice I'm ending up imitating. Those crows from A Hat in Time. I think that's where I'm getting this voice from. He said, "I shall be most happy to tell you anything I can." The constable answered with his eyes above the little golden disc. "Just let us hear it all in your own way as it occurred." Rassange sat down on the horsehair sofa, and knitted his brow as though determined not to omit anything in his narrative. "I'll tell you from the beginning," he said. "My time is from 10 at night to 6 in the morning. At 11 there was a fight at the White Hart, but the bar that was quiet enough on the beat. At 1 o'clock it began to rain. I met Harry Murcher, him who has the Holland Grove beat. We stood together at the corner of Henrietta Street a-talking. Presently, maybe about 2 or a little after, I thought I'd take a look around and see that all was right down the Brixton Road. It was precious dirty and lonely. Not a soul did I meet all the way down, though a cab or two went past me. I was strolling down, thinking between ourselves how uncommonly handy a floor of gin hot would be, which suddenly the glint of light caught my eye in the window of that same house. Now I knew that them 2 houses in Lochran Gardens were empty on account of him that owns them, who won't have the drains seen to. Though the very last tenant what lived in one of them died of typhoid fever. I was knocked all in the heap for at seeing a light in the window, and I suspected something was wrong when I got to the door." "You stopped and walked back into the garden gate," my companion interrupted. "What did you do that for?" Rossin gave a violent jump and stared at Sherlock Holmes with the utmost amazement upon his features. "Well, that's true, sir," he said, "though how could you come to know it? Heaven only knows. You see, when I got up to the door, it was so still and so lonesome that I thought I'd be none the worse for some one with me. I ain't afeard of anything on this side of the grave, but I thought that maybe it was him that died of the typhoid inspecting the drains what killed him. The thoughts gave me a kind of o-turn, and I walked back to the gate to see if I could see Muncher's lantern, but there was no sign of him, nor of any one else." "There was no one in the street?" "Not a living soul, sir, nor as much as a dog. Then I pulled myself together and went back and pushed the door open. All was quiet inside, so I went into the room where the light was a-burning. There was a candle flickering on the mantelpiece, a red wax one, and by its light I saw—" "Yes, I know all that you saw. You walked around the room several times, knelt down by the body. Then you walked through and tried the kitchen door, and then—" John Rossin sprang to his feet with a frightened face, suspicion in his eyes. "Where was you hid to see all that?" he cried. "It seems to me that you know a deal more than you should." Holmes laughed and threw his cards across the table to the constable. "Don't get arresting me for the murder," he said. "I'm one of the hounds, and not the wolf. Mr. Gregson or Lestrade will answer for that. Go on, though. What did you do next?" Rossin resumed his seat, without, however, losing his mystified expression. "I went back to the gate and stood by the whistle. That brought Muncher and two more to the spot." "Was the street empty then?" "Well, it was as far as anyone that could be of any good goes." "What do you mean?" The constable's features broadened in a grin. "I've seen many a drunk chap in my time," he said, "but never anyone so cryingly drunk as that cove. He was at the gate of 8 when I came out, a-leaping up agin the railings and a-singing at the pitch of his lungs about Columbine's new-fangled banner, or some such stuff. Couldn't stand, far less help." "What sort of man was he?" asked Sherlock Holmes. John Rossin appeared to be somewhat irritated at this digression. "He was an uncommon drunk sort of man," he said. "He hard found himself in the station if we hadn't been so took up." "His face, his dress, did you notice them?" Holmes broke in impatiently. "I should think that I did notice him, seeing that I had to prop him up, me and Muncher between us. He was a long chap, with a red face, and a lower part muffled round." "That will do," cried Holmes. "What became of him?" "We'd enough to do without looking after him," the policeman said in an aggrieved voice. "I'd wager he found his way home all right." "How was he dressed?" Wrong voice. How was he dressed?" "A brown overcoat." "How do you whip in his hand?" "A whip? No." "He must have left it behind," muttered my companion. "You didn't happen to see or hear a cab after that?" "No." There's a half sovereign for you," my companion said, standing up and taking his hat. "I'm afraid, Rossin, that you will never rise in the force. That head of yours should be for use as well as an ornament. You might have gained your sergeant's stripes last night. The man whom you held in your hands is the man who holds the clue to this mystery, and whom we are seeking. There's no use arguing about it now. I'll tell you that it is so. Come along, Doctor." We started off for the cab again, leaving our informant incredulous. Why is there no conjugation on that? But obviously uncomfortable. "The blundering fool," Holmes said bitterly as we drove back to our lodgings. Just to think of his having such an incomparable bit of good luck, and not taking advantage of it. I am rather in the dark still. Is it true that the description of this man tallies with your idea of the second party in this mystery? But why should he come back to the house after leaving it? That is not the way of criminals. The ring, man, the ring. That was what he came back for. If we have no other way of catching him, we can always bait our line with the ring. I shall have him, Doctor. I'll lay you 2 to 1 that I have him. I must thank you for it after it all. I might not have gone but for you, and so I admit it's the finest study I've ever come across. A Study in Scarlet, eh? Title drop. Why shouldn't we use a little art jargon? There's a scarlet thread of murder running through the colourless skein of life, and our duty is to unravel it, and isolate it, and expose every inch of it. And now for lunch, and then for Norman Nondra. Her attack and her bowing was splendid. Okay, he's still talking. That it seemed a bit awkward. What's that little thing of Chopin she's playing so magnificently? Tra-la-la, lira-lira-lay. Sorry, that didn't fit that epic voice. Leaning back in the cab, this amateur bloodhound on car rolled away like a lark while I meditated upon the many excitedness of the human's mind. Yes, Holmes, do the tra-la-la. You have the power of saying silly things in an epic voice. I like big butts, and I cannot lie. Know this, Watson. I can't. Sorry. Trying to regain my composure. Pee is stored in the balls. No, that's ridiculous. Chapter 5. Our advertisement brings a visitor. Our morning excursion had been too much for my weak health, and I was tired out in the afternoon. After home departure for the concert, I lay down upon the sofa and endeavored to get a couple of hours of sleep. It was a useless attempt. My mind had been too much excited by all that had occurred, and the strangest fancies and summaries crowded into it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw before me the distorted, baboon-like countenance of the murdered man. So sinister was the impression which that face had produced upon me, that I found it difficult to feel anything but gratitude for him who had been removed its owner from the world. If ever human features bespoke vice of the most malignant type, they would certainly be those of Enric J. Drebber of Cleveland. Still I recognized that justice must be done, and the depravity of the victim was no condonement in the eyes of the law. The more I thought of it, the more extraordinary did my companion's hypothesis, that man who had been poisoned appear, or that the man had been poisoned appear. I remembered how he had sniffed his lip, and had no doubt that he had detected something which had given rise to the idea that again, if not poison, what had caused the man's death, since there was neither wounds nor mark of strangulation. But on the other hand, whose blood was that which lies so thickly upon the floor? There was no time, there was no signs of struggle, nor had the victim any weapon, and with which he might have wounded an antagonist, as long as all those questions were unresolved or unsolved. I felt that sleep would be no easy matter, either for Holmes or myself. Sorry. His quiet, self-confident manner convinced me that he had already formed a theory which explained all the facts, though what it was I could not for an instant conjecture. He was very late in returning, so late that I knew that the concert could not have detained him all that time. Dinner was on the table before he appeared. "It was magnificent," he said as he took his seat. "Do you remember what Darwin said about music? He claims that the power of producing and appreciating it existed among the human race long before the power of speech was arrived at. Perhaps that is why we are so subtly influenced by it. There are vague memories in our souls of those misty centuries, when the world was in its childhood." "That's a rather broad idea," I remarked. "One's ideas must be as broad as nature, if they are so to interpret nature." He answered, "What's the matter? You're not looking quite yourself. The Brixton Road affair has upset you?" "To tell the truth, it has," I said. "I ought to be more case-hardened after my Afghan experience. I saw my own comrades hacked into pieces at Melwan without losing my nerve. I can understand. There is a mystery about this which stimulates the imagination. Were there no imagination, there is no horror. Have you seen the evening paper?" "No." "It gives a frighteningly good account of the affair. It does not mention the fact that when the man was raised up, a woman's wedding ring fell upon the floor. It is just as well it does not." "Why?" "Look at this advertisement," he answered. "I had one sent into every paper in this morning immediately after the affair." He threw the paper across to me, and I glanced at the paper, at the place indicated. It was the first announcement in the Found column, in Brixton Road, this morning. It ran, "And a plain gold wedding ring found in the roadway between White Hart Tavern and Holland Grove. Apply, Dr. Watson, 221 B Baker Street, between 8 and 9 this evening." "Excuse my using your name," he said. "If I used my own, some of those dunderheads would recognize it and want to meddle in the affair." "That is all right," I answered. But supposing anyone applies, I have no ring." "Oh, yes, you have," he said, handing me one. "This will do very well. It is almost a facsimile." What does that word mean? Oh yeah, for these reading streams, we learn words. Facsimile, an exact copy, especially of written or printed material, or the verb, make a copy of. So that's what that means. We should read the dictionary next. Hi, Gasly. Welcome to the stream. I'm glad you could make it. We're reading Sherlock Holmes. This is your bedtime story? Aw, that's sweet. I mean, I guess a sheep doesn't really fall asleep counting sheep, do they? Like, man, I see these bitches every day. What do you want me to do? Count myself. 1. And who do you expect will answer this advertisement? Why, the man in the brown coat, our florid friend with the square toes, if he isn't does not come himself, he will send an accomplice. Would he not consider it as too dangerous? Not at all. If my view of the case is correct, and I have every reason to believe that, the man would rather risk anything than lose the ring. According to my notion, he dropped it while stooping over Drever's body, and did not miss it at the time. After leaving the house, he discovered his loss and hurried back, but found the police already in possession, owing to his own folly in leaving the candle burning. He had to pretend to be drunk in order to allay the suspicions which might have been aroused by his appearance at the gate. Now put yourself in the man's place. On thinking the matter over, it might have occurred to him that it was possible that he had lost a ring in the road after leaving the house. What would he do then? He would eagerly look out over the evening paper in hopes of seeing it among the articles found. His eyes, of course, would light upon this. He would be overjoyed. Why should he fear a trap? There is no reason in his eyes why the finding of the ring should be connected with the murder. He will come. He will come. You shall see him within an hour. And then I asked, "Oh, you can leave me to deal with him then. Have you any arms?" My old service revolver and a few cartridges." "You had better clean them and load them. He will be a desperate man, and though I shall take him unawares, it is as well to be ready for anything." I went to my bedroom and followed his advice. When I returned with the pistol, the table had been cleared, and Holmes was engaged in his favorite occupation of scraping upon his fiddle. "The plot thickens," he said as I entered. "I have just had an answer to my American telegram. My views of the case is the correct one." "And that is?" I asked eagerly. "My fiddle will be the best for new strings," he remarked. "Put your pistol in your pocket. When the fellow comes, speak to him in an ordinary way. Leave the rest to me. Don't frighten him by looking at him too hard." "It is 8 o'clock now," I said, glancing at my watch. "Yes, he will probably be here within a few minutes." "Open the door slightly. That will do. I'll put the keys on the inside. Thank you. This is the queer old book I picked up at the stall yesterday. Dijon and Interargentos, published in Latin at Legion in Lowland in 1642. Charles' head was still firm on his shoulders, as when this little brown-backed volume was struck off. Aw, I'm glad I could spark something. My voice is the only talent I have. I hope it's decent. I got a plethora of voices, most of them male. I've been trying to practice females, but the female practice is a bit rocky. Who's the printer? And also, you might have noticed my Watson voice is a mimic of Johnny Young Bosch, or yeah, he does Jonathan Joestar, right? That's who I'm always picturing when doing that voice. So it's I call it my discount Johnny Young Bosch voice, the one I'm using for Watson. He's the one you get off Wish. Philippine de Croix, whoever he may have been, on the flyleaf is in very faded ink. It's written ex libris Guliolomi White. I wonder who William White was. Some pragmatical 17th century lawyer, I suppose. His writings have a legal twist about them. Here comes our man, I think. As he spoke, there was a sharp ring at the bell. Sherlock Holmes rose softly and moved his chair in the direction of the door. He heard the servant pass along the hall, and the sharp click of the latch as she opened it. Okay, so this is going to be the new guy. I need a voice for him. I also have goofy voices, like Team 4 Star's Krillin and Nappa, if you've ever seen the VODs of my Dragon Ball Z stuff. But let's see if I can't find something that isn't completely ridiculous for this. Yes. Well, they're really fun, and, it's always nice to make fun of Krillin. I've also been practicing Tarot, who I believe is also the English voice for Eisen in Overlord, or however we pronounce his name. And of course, Nappa's just for the goofiness. But let's see. A harsh voice, okay. I'm glad I'm entertaining you guys. Let's see. Does a Dr. Watson live here? Asked a clear but rather harsh voice. We could not hear the servant's reply, but the door closed, and someone began to ascend the stairs. The footfall was an uncertain and shuffling one. A look of surprise passed over the face of my companion as he listened to it. It came slowly along the passage. There was a feeble tap at the door. "Come in," I cried. At my summons, instead of the man of violence whom we were expecting, a very old and wrinkled woman hobbled into the apartment. She appeared to be dazzled by the sudden blaze of light, and after dropping a curtsy, she stood blinking at us with her bleared eyes, and fumbled into her pocket with nervous shaking fingers. I glanced at my companion, and his face had assumed such a disconsolation in expression that all I could do was keep my contentions. Contensance? I'm gonna assume that means like composure, but that is a very weird spelling. A person's face or facial expression, admirable as acceptable or admit acceptable as or possible, or to support. Countenance. That's a weird ass word. Oh, in that case, I should probably change this to an old lady's voice. Man, that lady sure had a set of chords on her. The old crow drew out an evening paper and pointed at our advertisement. "It's this that has brought me, good gentlemen," she said, dropping another curtsy. "A gold wedding ring in the Brixton Road. It belongs to my girl Sally, as was married only this time, 12th month." She was a very manly old woman, a chain smoker. "With her husband as steward aboard a Union boat, and what he'd say if he come back in home and found her without her ring is more than I can think. He's been short enough at the best of times, but more especially when he has had the drink. If it has pleased you, she went to the circus last night along with—" "Is this her ring?" I asked. "The Lord be thanked!" cried the old woman. "Sally will be a glad woman this night. That's the ring." "And what may your address be?" I inquired, taking up a pencil. 13 Duncan Street, Houndsdrift. A weary way from here. The Brixton Road does not lie between any circus and Houndsdrift. This is home. The Brixton Road does not lie between any circus and Houndsdrift, said Sherlock Holmes sharply. The old woman's face rounded and looked keenly at him from her little red-rimmed eyes. "The gentleman asked me for my address. Sally lives in the lodgings at 3 Mayfair Place, Peckham." "And your name is?" "My name is Sawyer. Hers is Dennis, with Tom Dennis has married her. And a smart, clean lad, too, as long as he's at sea, and no steward in the company more thought of. But when on shore, what with the women and with the liquor shops." With many mumbling blessings and protestations of gratitude, the old crow— oh wait, no, I missed a line, sorry. "Here is your ring, Miss Sawyer," I interrupted, in to a sign from my companion. It clearly belongs to your daughter, and I am glad to be able to restore it to its rightful owner." With many mumbled blessings and protestations of gratitude, the old crone packed it away in her pocket and shuffled off down the stairs. Sherlock Holmes sprang to his feet the moment that she was gone and rushed to his room. He returned in a few seconds, enveloped in an ulcer and caferat. "I'll follow her," he said hurriedly. "She must be an accomplice and will lead me to him. Wait up for me." The hall's door had hardly slammed behind our visitor before Holmes had descended the stairs. Looking through the window, I could see her walking feebly along the other side, while her pursuer dogged her some distance behind. Either his whole theory is incorrect, I thought to myself, or else he will be led now to the heart of the mystery. There's no need for him to ask me to wait up for him, for I felt that sleep was impossible until I heard the result of his adventure. I need more water. I'm probably going to have to refill this a time or two before we're done here today. It was close upon 9 when he set out. I had no idea how long he might be, but I sat stoningly puffing at my pipe and skipping over the pages of Henry Murger's Vie de Bohème. 10 o'clock passed, and I heard the footsteps of the maid as they pattered off to bed. A levitt and more steadily a tread of the landlady passed my door and bound for the same destination. It was close upon 12 before I heard the sharp sound of his latch key. The instant he entered, I saw by his face he had not been successful. Amusement and chagrin seemed to be struggling for the mastery, until the former suddenly carried the day, and he burst into a hearty laugh. "I wouldn't have the Scotland Yarders know it for the world," he cried, dropping into his chair. "I have chaffed with them so much that I have let them hear the end of it. I can afford to laugh because I know that I will be even with them in the long run." "What is it, then?" I asked. "Oh, I don't mind telling you a story against myself. That creature had gone a little ways before she began to limp, show every sign of being footsore. Presently she came to a halt and hailed a four-wheeler which was passing. I managed to be close to her as to hear the address, but I need not be so anxious, for she sang it out loud enough to be heard from the other side of the street. 'Drive to 13 Duncan Street, Houndsdrift,' she cried. This began to look genuine, I thought, and having seen her safely inside, I pushed myself behind. That's an art which every detective should be an expert at. Well, away we rattled, and never drew rein until we reached the street in question. I hopped off before we came to the door, and strolled down the street in an easy, lounging way. I saw the cab pull away. The driver jumped down, and I saw him open the door and stand expectantly. Nothing came out, though. When I reached him, he was groping around frantically in the empty cab, giving vent to the finest assorted collections of oaths that I have ever listened to. There is no sign or trace of his passenger, and I fear it will be some time before he gets his fare. On inquiring at number 13, we found that the house belonged to a respectable paperhanger, Keswick, and no one of the same name as Sawyer or Dennis has ever been heard of there." "You don't mean to say," I cried in amazement, that tottering, feeble old woman was able to get out of the cab while it was still in motion, without either you or the driver seeing her?" "Old woman be damned," said Sherlock Ho sharply. We were the old women to be so taken in. It must have been a young man, an attractive... Sorry, I misread that. Not an attractive one, an active one. That's one hell of a misread. Besides being a comparable actor. Sherlock is not bad. The get-up was immutable. What a simp he is. Damn, Sherlock. Didn't know you were cross-dressing. The get-up was inimitable. He saw that he was followed, no doubt, and used this means of giving me the slip. It shows that the man we are after is not as lonely as I imagined he was, but has friends who is ready to risk something for him. Now, doctor, are you looking done up? Take my advice and turn in. I certainly feeling very weary, so I obeyed his injunction. I left home seated in front of the smouldering fire, and long into the watches of the night that I had heard the low, melancholy wailings of his violin, knew that he was still pondering over the strange problem which he had set himself to unravel. All right, on to the next chapter. Chapter 6. Tobias Gregson shows what he can do. The papers the next day were full of Brixton mystery, as they termed it. Each had a long account of the affair, and some had ledgers upon it in addition, or had leaders upon it in addition. There was some information in them which was new to me. I still retained in my scrapbook numerous clippings and extracts bearing upon the case. Here is a condensation of a few of them. The Daily Telegram remarked that in the history of crime there had seldom been a tragedy which presented its stranger features. The German name of the victim, the absence of all motive, and the sinister inscription on the wall, all point to its pre its prep. I should know this word. Perpetration by political refugees and revolutionists. The socialists had many branches in America, and the deceased had no doubt infringed their unwritten laws, and had been tracked down by them. After alluding airily to the Vigorgement, Aqua, Tofana, Carbonare, all these names, I swear to God, the Monarchnis, oh my goodness, the Monarchist de Brandevillers, the Darwinian theory, and the principles of Malthus, and the Ratcliffe highway murderers. The article concluded by admonishing the government and advocating a closer watch over foreigners in England. Oh, goodness gracious, that was a jumble of words. Yeah, those are things. I'm gonna give you an example of what I was just trying to deal with there. Copy paste those in chat. That's what I was trying to read. Fucking hell. I'm sure those would be easier for someone who grew up in the areas where those words have pronunciations. Oh, dude, I have the reading comprehension of a squirrel already. Is that below or above a sheep? I don't know if you're above or below average for you. Great question. Frankly, I don't know. That's a fair answer. Also, I'll be right back. I need to get more water. All right, I'm back. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, let's get back to it. The Standard commented upon the fact that the lawless outrages is of the sort usually occurred under a liberal administration. They arose from the unsettling of the minds of the masses and the consequent weakening of all authority. The decreases was an American gentleman, or the deceased was an American gentleman who had been residing for some weeks in the metropolis. He had stayed at the boarding house of Matter and Charpentier and Torquay Terence, Camberwell. He was accompanied in his travels by his private secretary, Mr. Joseph Strangerston. The two bade adieu to their landlady on Tuesday the 4th, or instant, and what? Tuesday the 4th INST dot comma as if it's shortening or something, and departed for Eston on station with the avowed intention of catching the Liverpool express. They are afterwards seen together upon the platform. Nothing more is known of them until Mr. Drebber's body was, as recorded, discovered in an empty house in the Brixton Road, many miles from Eston. How he came there, or how he met his fate, are questions which are still involved in the mystery. Nothing is known of the whereabouts of Strangerson. We are glad to learn that Mr. Lestrade and Mr. Gregson of Scotland Yard are both engaged upon the case, and confidently acquainted that these were well-known officers. Others will speedily throw light upon that matter. The Daily News observed that there was no doubt as to the crime being a political one. The disposition and hatred of liberalism, which animated the continental governments, had had the effect of driving to our shores a number of men who might have made excellent citizens were they not so soured by the recollection of all that had undergone. Among these men there was a strenuous code of honor, any infringement of which was punishable by death. Every effort should be made to find the secretary, Strangerson, and to ascertain some particulars of the habits of the deceased. A great step has been gained by the discovery of the address of the house in which he was boarded, a result which entirely due to the acuteness and energy of Mr. Gregson of Scotland Yard. Sherlock Holmes and I read these notices together at breakfast. They appeared to afford him some considerable amusement. I told you that whatever happened, Lestrade and Gregson would be sure to soar. That depends on how it turns out. Oh, bless you, it doesn't matter in the least. If the man is caught, it will be on account of their excursions. If he escapes, it will be in spite of their excursions. It's heads I win, tails you lose. However they do, whatever they do, they will have followers. And son trove, tonjor, plus sol quin al admer. What on earth is that? I cried, for at the moment there came in the pattering of many steps in the hall and on the stairs, accompanied by audible expressions of disgust upon the part of our landlady. It is the Baker Street division of the detective police force, said my companion gravely, and as he spoke, there rushed into the room half a dozen of the dirtiest, most ragged street Arabs that I had ever clapped eyes on. "Attention!" cried Holmes in the sharpest tone. 6 dirty little scoundrels stood in a line, like so many disreputable statues. In future you shall send of Wiggins alone to report, and the rest of you must wait in the street. Have you found it, Wiggins? No, sir. Oh, these are kids. Okay. No, sir, we haven't, said one of the youths. I hardly expected you would. You must keep on until you do. Here are your wages. He handed them each of them a shilling. Some very old kids. Now, back off you go, and come back with a better report next time. Wouldn't it be hilarious if everyone had the same old man voice?
They all sound raspy and like they're about to choke out on life itself in just an instant. Oh dear, that'd be awful. I'm too old to be working in this field anymore.
Sir, you're only 8.
I'm too old. Do you know what London does to someone who lives in it? It's far too smoky here. I swear the Industrial Revolution is killing us all.
Ancient 8-year-old. Sorry, clearing throat now. That's awesome. Oh, God. Ozza, Fleecy's talking smack about you. Then again, you'd probably talk smack to her face, so what the hell am I even on about? Don't do it again. What are they doing right now, anyways? Just took a look. They're arguing with Ash. Okay. Back to the story. He waved his hand, and they scampered away downstairs like so many rats. He had heard their shrill voices, and we heard their shrill voices next moment in the street. There's more work to be got out of one of those little beggars than out of a dozen of the force. Holmes remarked, the mere sight of an official-looking man official-looking person seals men's lips. These youngsters, however, go everywhere and hear everything. They're as sharp as needles, too. All they want is organization. Is it on this Brixton case that you are employing them? I asked. Yes, this is a point which I wish to ascertain. It is merely a matter of time. Hello, we are going to hear some news now with a vengeance. Here is Gregson coming down the road with the beatitude written upon every feature of his face, bound for us, I know. Yes, he is stopping. There he is. There was a violent peal at the bell. In a few seconds, the fair-haired detective came up the stairs, 3 steps at a time, and burst into our sitting room. "My dear fellow," he cried, wringing Holmes' unresponsive hand, "congratulate me! I have made this whole thing as clear as day." A shade of anxiety seemed to have crossed my companion's expressive face. "Do you mean that you are on the right track?" he asked. "The right track? Why, sir, we have the man under lock and key." "And his name is Arthur Carpentier, Sub-Lieutenant in Her Majesty's Navy," cried Gregson, pompously, rubbing his fat hands and inflating his chest. Sherlock Holmes gave a sigh of relief and relaxed his smile. "Take a seat and try one of these cigars," he said. "We are anxious to know how you managed it. Will you have some whiskey and water?" "I don't mind if I do," the detective answered. "The tremendous excursion which I have gone through during the last day or two have worn me out. Not so much bodily excursion, you understand, as a strain upon the mind. You will appreciate that, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, for we are both brain workers." "You do me so much honor," said Holmes gravely. "Let us hear how you arrived at this most gratifying results." The detective seated himself in the armchair and puffed of complacently at the cigar. Then suddenly he slapped his thigh, as if in paroxysm of amusement. "The fun of it! The fun of it is," he cried, "that fool Lestrade, who thinks himself so smart, has gone off upon the wrong track altogether. He's after the secretary Stangerson, and who had no more to do with the crime than a babe on board. I have no doubt that he's caught on by this time." I love that he only selected people with British accents. I'm not even sure if I'm doing that right. Though reasonably everyone would, but I can't do that much. I can't do that much of a range of British accents. I'd lose like 98% of my voices. And that 2% is made up of trying to see if I can squeeze an Aussie accent into a British character. The idea tickled Gregson so much that he laughed until he choked. Please do an Aussie accent. It might take a few warm-ups. Now I'm getting embarrassed for it. Trying to find good lines for it. Time, mate. You took your time. In case his goons got... that's starting to slip away. I don't think I can do Ranger Ken with that. I think I just have to do Jace and work with that. I'm going to try it like this. What, you're from Space Australia? Well, specifically Space Brisbane. Go Space Broncos! I have to have a bit of a lead up to grasp it. Come and have a go if you think you had enough. Granted, those accentations are more rural, but crowd cheers, goes wild, the arena lights up. Aw, you flatter me. Aw. I need to put on my smirk for that. It's everything I wanted in life. Aw. Yeah, it is. I do look pretty damn good, don't I? But don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. I'm still buffering. You can see by the fishies in my eyes, I'm still buffering. Speeds of Internet Explorer. Actually, have you seen my whole model? I mean, this isn't all of it, but I like showing myself off. You haven't on stream? I see. Now let's get a little zoom.
give you a good depiction. Can I move that book? Nope, book's not going to want to move. Love the koi? Oh yeah, I love them too. I actually have hands underneath here. Look at them. And I got feet. Wave designs. I love it, I love it, I love it. Does the kois have names? No, they do not have names. I haven't thought to name them. I haven't even named my mimic yet. It was hard enough naming me. Yes, for free. I mean, they're not naked feet. So take it with a grain of salt. They have socks on. Good enough for you. Oh, yes, my favorite. Midnight blue feet. A very particular fetish was filled today. I'm gonna pop my shoulders here. All right. Now let's keep the smirk on. Makes me look hot. Oh, wait. All right. Let's see. Where were we? Here we are. The idea tickled Gregson so much that he laughed until he choked. And how did you get your clue? Oh, I'll tell you all about it. Of course, Dr. Watson, this is strictly between ourselves. The first difficulty which we had to contend with was finding that this American's attendance. Some people would have waited until their advertisements were answered, but until no parties came forward and volunteered information, that is not Tobias Gregson's way of going to work. You remember that ad beside the dead man? Yes, said Holmes. By John Underwood and Sons, 129 Camberwell Road. Gregson looked quite chestfallen. I had no idea you noticed that, he said. Have you been there? No. Ah! cried Gregson in a relieved voice. You should have never neglected that chance, however small it may seem. To a great mind, nothing is little, remarked Holmes sententiously. What does that word mean? We get to learn another word. Given to or abounding in excessive moralization, tense, aphoristic, or moralist in expression, pity, enigmatic, Silverlane's adverb. Who's this Pokemon? Who's that Pokemon Words edition? It really is with these older books, ain't it? We find all these mythical old Pokemon, all these mythical words. Now, if it's a science book, then you find the legendary Pokemon or the legendary words. And if it's like British English versus American English, it'll be regional variants. I'm just God appears in the form of a science book. God appears, Darwin was right, disappears. What's a shiny? Word art? Like logos and whatnot? Or, well, not just regular logos, but alternate versions of logos or fancy looks for it. What does that make cursive? Or maybe re-release of older books with newer color covers? Actually, that particular example might be fossilized compared to normal. So it'd be the original covers of these books that'd be the fossilized Pokemon. How's that? And the new covers would be their evolution. Just a thought. Cursive is that pink Eevee evolution, only that one, that's it. Sylveon? Yeah, that series theory sounds good. Anyways, where were we when we ran into that word? Here we are. Well, I went to Underwood and asked him if he had sold a hat of that size and description. He looked over his books and came on it at once. He had sent the hat to Mr. Draper, residing at Cheverton and boarding establishment, Torkley Terrace. Thus I got his address. Smart, very smart, muttered Sherlock Holmes. I next called upon Madame and Carpentier, continued the detective. I found her very pale and distressed. Her daughter was in the room too, an uncommonly fine woman, and she is too. She was looking red around the eyes, and her lips trembled as she spoke. But I didn't escape my notice. I began to smell a rat. You know, the feeling, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, when you come upon the right scent, kind of thrill in your nerves. Have you ever heard the mysterious death of your late boarder, of Mr. Edwin J. Draper, of Cleveland? I asked. My mother nodded and didn't seem to be able to get out a word. The daughter burst into tears. I felt more, however, that these people knew something of the matter. And what o'clock did Mr. Draper leave your house for the train? I asked. At 8 o'clock, she said, gulping at her throat to keep down her agitation. His secretary, Mr. Strangerson, said there were 2 trains, one at 9:15 and one at 11. It was to catch the first. And what was it? And was that the last which you saw him? Oh wait, no, this is all. Sorry. This is all Gregson recounting this. My bad. And was that the last you saw him? A terrible change came over the woman. As I asked the question, her features turned perfectly livid. I was some seconds before she could get out the single word yes, and when it did, came out a husky, unnatural tone. There was a silence for a moment, and the daughter spoke in a calm, clear voice. No good can ever come of falsehood, mother, she said. Let us be frank with this gentleman. We did see Mr. Draper again. God forgive you, said Miss Carpenter, throwing up her hands, sinking back in the chair. You have murdered your brother. Arthur would rather that we spoke the truth, the girl answered firmly. She had best tell me all about it now, I had said. And half confidences are worse than none. Besides, we do not know how much we know of it. Wow, that is a weird ass phrasing. You do not know how much we know of it. That's so fucking weird. Also, Gregson's voice is very exhausting. Please leave, Gregson. Yeah, pretty much. You don't know what I know of what you know. On it be on your head be it, Alice, said her mother, and then turning to me, I will tell you all, sir. Do not imagine my agitation on behalf of my son arises from any fear lest he should have had a hand in this terrible affair. He is utterly innocent of it. My dread is, however, that in your eyes and the eyes of others he may appear to be compromised. That, however, is surely impossible. His high character, his perfection, his antecedents would all forbid. So when I do it's terrible writing, hard to read, but when Conan does it, it's a masterpiece. In all fairness, he's from a different era. Like, this book was released in 1862, I want to say? A Study in Scarlet, 1887. Skill issue. Skill issue, Conan. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. People in the 21st century couldn't be me. Shake my head. Your best way to make a clean breast of the facts, I answered, depends upon it. If your son is innocent, he'll be none the worse. Perhaps, Alice, you had better leave us together, she said, and her daughter withdrew. Now, sir, she continued, I had no intention of telling you all this, but since my daughter had disclosed it, I had no alternative. Having once decided to speak, I will tell you all without omitting any particulars. It is your wisest choice, I said. Mr. Dropper had been with us nearly 3 weeks. He and his secretary, Mr. Strangerson, had been travelling on the continent. Also, I can just imagine this is like one of those episodes in a cartoon that has a flashback where the same character is voicing everyone in the flashback, even if they have an established voice actor for that character. I always love those, and it's hilarious. My favorite. It's even funnier if they do it after these people have been introduced. I noticed a Copenhagen label upon each of their trunks. Even better if it's a very specific voice. And even more if that specific voice is trying to imitate the original voice. But very clearly poorly. Actually, either way works, even if it's just their normal one. But it depends on the voice. Like, for example, if, let's use, Joe Swanson's voice actor, can't remember his name right now. Played Barkin on Kim Possible. That guy. If he did it with his same usual monotone, that works even better than if he were trying a different voice. But if, say, someone like, let's see, how about, trying to find a good example. How about, Atticus from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX? The same voice actor who does Sonic for Sonic X. If that voice actor tried to put on a goofy Sonic-ish attempt at whatever way that person was speaking. See, it all depends on what voice you're working with, depending on what angle you go for that joke with. I searched my head for a good recognizable one. Because I can name names, but I had to find something. Something to connect. I like Sonic. Sonic's fun. I mean, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 are, at least. And, hot take, I liked Shadow the Hedgehog, like the video game. I thought it was fun. I know. Oh yeah, I love Sonic. Burn me at the stake, though. I enjoyed the Shadow the Hedgehog video game. I partially love Sonic because so many games are bad. I just grew up with Sonic Adventure 2 and then later DX and then Shadow the Hedgehog, and I love the shit out of those. I was always terrible at the original games, though. I love hate watching and playing things. Ah, I see. Mood. It's also where the Aussie accent came from, because one of the games I grew up with was Ty the Tasmanian Tiger 2. I actually scared of video games as a kid. I could not imagine that. What about them scared you? Felt like life or death situation, even though it's digital. I get that. I do get that. Some parts can be very. I guess the best way to describe them is butt clinchy. Especially platformers. I don't like dying, even though I wasn't gonna actually die. I mean, there's a game for you then. Kirby's Epic Yarn. You can't die in that game. It's also super cute. And it's aged really well. I'm fine now with video games. Love them. Awesome. We'll have to cross-reference video games sometime, see what we've played and enjoyed. I can still play Kirby, though. One of my siblings had Kirby Squeak Squad, and that's the Kirby game that we had that was a main release. The other Kirby game we had was Kirby Air Ride, and God, if a game needs a sequel or port or a remaster, it's Kirby Air Ride, because Kirby Air Ride is the fucking shit. If you haven't gotten the chance, I guess right now I can only really suggest an emulator. Unless you have a GameCube and can find it, but otherwise, Dolphin. What's it called again? Kirby Air Ride. At first, it just seems like a kart racer, but it is so much more. It is so much better than just a kart racer. City Trial, that mode, fucking makes that game. Oh, it's so good. I wonder how difficult it would be for an emulator to connect multiplayer on that. I'd have to look into that. You were leading it up for a sec for a secret horror game, not gonna lie. No, nothing horrific. Well, I mean, it is a Kirby game, I guess. Kirby games always have that, oh, yeah, we start in this little green field, everything's happy, and then by the end of it, Kirby, this little pink puffball's gonna go punch an evil Eldritchian horror. And just be okay with that. Kirby's weird. If you've never played a Kirby game, there's like a drastic, there's a massive change. Kirby's gonna kill God. I mean, yeah. Actually, I'm gonna share. There's a clip someone made. Or, well, just a bit someone did. Called, guy called Nico B. I don't know if you watch him, heard of him, but he did a Kirby thing. Go be Kirby full lore. I'll make sure my desktop audio is muted for this. Let's see. Da 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 da. Okay, so this video, for just a short bit, at 28:47 or 28:45. Just listen to him up until about 29:25 there. Or you know what? I actually might be able to slap that on screen. Give me a moment. I'm an idiot. I can make fucking content of this. What am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Don't click on that. I'm gonna do it. I'm already there. I just gotta figure out the window thing again. Let me hide my bookmark bar. Over here, and then doop, and window capture. YouTube. Okay. Yeah, this. Okay. I'm just gonna move myself over here. I'm gonna have that there. Desktop audio on. Is everything clear? Awesome. Okay.
Class, and I don't care core things, and I know what. Look at this little
computer.
Look at Kirby. Look at this little dopey asshole just looking up to the sky like, God, what the fuck's happening? Does Kirby even know what's going on? Does he look at him? He's just like,
I'm just gonna go out and do things, and I'm gonna beat up the guys that get in my way. La 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 la.
it's like, I'm corporate America. I'm here to fuck over your little suburb here, Kirby. And he's like,
I'm gonna get you with the power of friendship.
he's like, no, you don't get it. There's a very deep topical discussion to be had here about taxes and the wealthy upper class besmirching the fucking lower class. And
I don't care about that. All I care about is eating cake. Yay!
Meanwhile, Haltman was
That. Like a kid looking up at their parents. Yep. I do recommend Nico B though. He's my favorite YouTuber. Do you have games on your phone? Like Kirby never knows what the hell's going on. Anyways, we've gotten way off track here. Oh goodness. Oh goodness, we have. We were investigating a murder. How did we get on Kirby? Actually, that's extremely on brand for Kirby. Well, was great to hang. It's almost 2 a.m. here, though. Alright. I hope you sleep well then. I'll keep reading, and maybe you'll fall asleep to it. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I haven't played enough Kirby games. Alright. Have a great sleep. And thanks for stopping by. Alright, on with it. All notice of Copenhagen getting left able upon each of their trunks, showing that there had been and their lost stolen plate. Striker's son was a quite reserved man, but his employer, I'm sorry to say, was far otherwise. He was coarse in his habits and brutish in his ways. The very night of his arrival, he became very much the worse for drink, and indeed after 12 o'clock in the day, he'd hardly ever be said to be sober. His manner as towards the maidservants was disgustingly free and familiar. Worst of all, he speedily assumed the same attitude towards my daughter, Alice, and spoke to her more than once in a way which, fortunately, she is too innocent to understand. On one occasion, he actually seized her in his arms and embraced her, an outrage which caused his own security to reproach him for his unmanly conduct. But why did you stand all this? I asked. I suppose that you could get rid of your boarders when you wish. Mrs. Carpenter blushed at my pertinent question. What to God that I had given him notice on every day that he came, she said, but it was a sore temptation. They were paying £1 a day each, £14 a week, and this is a slack season. I am a widow, and my boys in the Navy has cost me much. I grudged to lose the money. I acted for the best. This loss was too much. However, I gave him notice to leave on account of it. That was the reason for his going. Well, my heart grew light when I saw him drive away. My son is on leave just now. But I did not tell him anything of all this, for his temper is violent, and he is passionately fond of his sister. When I closed the door behind them, a load seemed to be lifted from my mind. Alas, in less than an hour, there was a ring at the bell, and I learned that Mr. Drebber had returned. He was much excited, and evidently the worse for drink. He had forced his way into the room where I was sitting with my daughter, made some incoherent remark about having missed his train, and then turned to Alice, and before my very face proposed to her that she should fly with him. "You are of age," he said, "and there's no law to stop you. I have money enough to spare. Never mind the old galley, and come along with me now straight away. You shall live like a princess." Poor Alice was so frightened that she shrank away from him, but he caught her by the wrist and endeavoured to draw her towards the door. I screamed, and at that moment my son Arthur came into the room. What happened then I do not know. I heard us and confused sounds of a scuffle. I was too terrified to raise my hand. When I did not look up, when I did look up, I saw Arthur standing in the door, all laughing, and with a stick in his hand. "I don't think that foreign fellow will trouble us again," he said. "I will just go after him and see what he does with himself." With those words, he took his hat and started off down the street. The next morning we heard Mr. Drebber's mysterious death. This statement came from Mrs. Carpenter's lips with much gaps and pauses. At times she spoke so low that I could only catch the words. I made shorthand notes of all that she said, however, so there shall be no possibility of mistake.
"It is quite exciting," said Sherlock Holmes with a yawn. "What happened next?"
"When Mrs. Carpenter paused," the detective continued, "I saw that the whole case hung on one point, fixing her with my eye in a way which I always found effective with women. I asked her what hour her son returned. "I do not know," she answered. "Not now. No, he is a latchkey and let himself in." "After you went to bed?" "Yes." "When did she go to bed?" "About 11. "So your son was gone at least 2 hours?" "Yes." "Possibly before 5? "Yes." "What was he doing during that time?" "I do not know," she answered, doing the white to her very lips. Of course, after that, there was nothing more to be done. I found out where Lieutenant Carpenter was, took 2 officers with me, and arrested him. When I touched him on the shoulder and wanted to come quietly with us, he answered us in a bull that's brash. "I suppose you're arresting me for being concerned in the death of that scoundrel, old Drebber," he said. He had said nothing to him about it, but so that is alluding to it had the most suspicious aspect.
"Very," said Holmes.
He still carried around a heavy stick with the mother described him as having, and with him when he followed Drebber. It was a stout old cudgel.
"What is your theory, then?"
"Well, my theory is he followed Drebber as far as Brixton Road. When there a fresh altercation arose between them, in the course of which Drebber received a blow with the stick in the pit of the stomach, perhaps, which killed him without leaving a mark. The night was so wet that no one was about, so Mr. Carpenter dragged the body of his victim into the empty house. As to the candle, the blood and the writing on the wall, and the ring, and he made so many tricks to throw the police off the wrong scent."
"Well done," said Holmes in an encouraging voice. "Really, Gregson, you are getting along. We shall make something of you yet."
"I flatter myself that I have managed it rather neatly,"
the detective answered proudly.
The young man volunteered a statement in which he said that after following Drebber some time, the latter pursued him and took a cab in order to get away from him. On his way home, he met an old shipmate and took a long walk with him. On being asked where this old shipmate lived, he was unable to give us a satisfactory reply. I think the whole case fits together uncomfortably well, or uncommonly well. What amuses me is that I think old Lestrade has sorted off upon the wrong scent. I'm afraid he won't make it. Why, by Jove, he is the very man himself."
It was indeed Lestrade who had asserted the stairs while we were talking, and who now entered the room. The assurance and jauntiness which generally marked his demeanour and dress were however wanting. His face was disturbed and troubled, while his clothes were disarranged and untidy. He had evidently come with the intention of consulting with Sherlock Holmes, for on perceiving his colleague he appeared to be embarrassed and put out. He stood in the centre of the room, fumbling nervously with his hat, and uncertain what to do. This is a most extraordinary case," he said at last. "A most incomprehensible affair."
"I should find it so, Mr. Lestrade,"
said Gregson triumphantly.
"I thought you would come to that conclusion. Have you managed to find the secretary of Joseph Staggerson?"
"The secretary, Mr. Joseph Staggerson," said Lestrade gravely, "was murdered at Holiday, a private hotel, about 6 o'clock this morning."
Ooh. The plot thickens.
What the? Hold on. Do. So I'll address it later. Back to it. The intelligence which Lestrade... Oh, sorry. I didn't read the chapter title. Chapter 7. Light in the Darkness. The intelligence of which his Lestrade greeted us was so monumentous and so unexpected that we were all three fairly dumbfounded. Gregson sprang out of his chair and upset the remainder of his whiskey and water. I stared in silence at Sherlock Ho, whose lips were compressed and his brow drawn down over his eyes. "Staggerson, too," he muttered. "The plot thickens."
"It was quite thick enough before,"
grumbled Lestrade, taking a chair. "I seem to have dropped into some sort of council of war."
Are you sure this piece of intelligence?"
stammered Gregson.
"I have just come from his room,"
said Lestrade. I was the first to discover what had occurred. "We have been hearing Gregson's view on the matter," Holmes observed. "Would you mind letting us know what you've seen and done?"
"I have no objection,"
Lestrade answered, seating himself.
"I freely confess that I was of the opinion that Stangerson was concerned in the death of Drebber. This fresh development has shown me that I was completely mistaken. Full of the one idea, I set myself to find out what had become of the secretary that had been seen together at Easton Station about 8:30 on the evening of the 3rd. At 2 in the morning, Drebber had been found in the Brixton Road. The question which confronted me was to find out how Staggerson had been employed between 8:30 and the time of the crime. What had become of him afterwards? I telegraphed to Liverpool giving a description of the man and warning to find upon them American boats. Then I set to work calling upon all the hotels and lodging houses in the vicinity of Easton. You see, I argued that if Drebber and his companion had become separated, the natural course for the latter would be to put up somewhere in the vicinity for the night, then hang around the station again the next morning.
"They would be likely to agree on some meeting place beforehand," remarked Holmes.
So it proved that I spent the whole of yesterday evening in making inquiries entirely without avail. This morning I began very early, and at 8 o'clock I reached Holiday, a private hotel at Little George Street. On my inquiry as to whether Mr. Sturgeon was living there, they at once answered me in the affirmative. "No doubt you are the gentleman whom he was expecting," they said. "He has been waiting for a gentleman for 2 days." "Where is he now?" I asked. "He is upstairs in bed, and wished to be called at 9. "I will go up and see him at once," I said. It seems to me that my sudden appearance might shake his nerves, and lead him to say something unguarded. The boots volunteered to show me the room. It was on the 2nd floor, and there was a small corridor leading up to it. The boots pointed out the door to me. I was about to go downstairs again when I saw something that made me feel sickish, in spite of my 20 years' experience. From under the door there curled a little red ribbon of blood, which meandered across the passage and formed a little pool along the skirting at the other side. I gave a cry which brought the boots back. He nearly fainted when he saw it. The door was locked on the inside, but we put our shoulders to it and knocked it in. The window of the room was open, and besides the window, all huddled up, the body of a man in his nightdress. He was quite dead, and had been in for some time, for his limbs were rigid and cold. When we turned him over, the Poots recognized him at once as being the same gentleman who had engaged the room under the name Joseph Staggerson. The cause of death was a deep stab in the left side, which must have been penetrated in the heart. Now comes the strangest part of the affair. What do you suppose was above the murdered man? I felt a creeping of the flesh and a presentiment of coming horror even before Sherlock Holmes answered. The word Rocher, written in letters of blood. That was it, said Lestrade in an awestruck voice, and we were all silent for a while. There was something so methodical and so incomprehensible about the deeds of this unknown assassin that it imparted a ghastliness to his crimes. My nerve, which was steadily enough on the field of battle, tense as I thought of it. The man was seen, continued Lestrade. A milk boy passing on his way to the dairy happened to walk down the lane which leads from the mews at the back of the hotel. He noticed that the ladder, which usually lay there, was raised against one of the windows of the second floor, which was wide open. After pausing, he looked back and saw a man descend the ladder. He came down so quietly and openly the boy imagined him to be some carpenter or joiner at the work hotel. He took no particular notice, beyond thinking in his own mind that it was early for him to be at work. He had an impression that his man was tall, had a reddish face, and was dressed in a long, brownish coat. He must have stayed in the room some little time after the murder, for we found blood-stained water in the basin where he had washed his hands, and marks on the sheets where he had deliberately wiped his knife. I glanced at Holmes on hearing the description of the murderer, which tallied so exactly with his own. There was, however, no trace of exultation or satisfaction upon his face. Did you find nothing in the room which could furnish a clue to the murderer? He asked. Nothing. Stangerson had Drebber's purse in his pocket, but it seems that this was usual, as he did all the paying. There was 80-odd pounds in it, but nothing had been taken. Whatever the motive of these extraordinary crimes, robbery is certainly not one of them. There's no papers or memoranda in the murdered man's pocket, except a single telegram dated from Cleveland about a month ago, and containing the words J.H. is in Europe. There's no name appended to this message. And there was nothing else? Mr. Holmes asked. Nothing of importance. The man's novel, with which he had been reading himself, was to sleep, was lying upon the bed. His pipe was on a chair beside him. There was a glass of water on the table, and a window-sill, a small chip ointment box containing a couple of pills. Sherlock Holmes sprang from his chair with an exclamation of delight. The last link, he cried exuberantly. My case is complete. The two detectives stared at him in amazement. I have now in my hands, my companion said confidently, all the threads which form such a tangle. There are, of course, details to be filled in, but I am as certain as all the main facts, from the time that Drebber parted from Stangerson at the station up to the discovery of the body of the latter, as I could see them with my own eyes. I will give you the proof of my knowledge. Could you lay your hands upon those pills? I have them, said Lestrade, producing a small white box. I took them and the purse and the telegram, intended to have them in place of safety at the police station. It was the merest chance my taking these pills, for I am bound to say that I do not attach any importance to them. Give them here, said Holmes. Now, doctor,
turned to me. Are those ordinary pills? They certainly were not. They were of a pearly gray color, small, round, and almost transparent against the light. From their lightness and transparency, I can imagine they're very soluble in water, I remarked. Precisely so, answered Holmes. Now, would you mind going down and fetching that poor little devil of a terrier which has been bad so long, and which the landlady wants you to put out of its pain yesterday? I went downstairs and carried the dog upstairs in my arms, its labored breathing and glazed eyes showed that it was not far from its end. Indeed, its snow-white muzzle will proclaim that it had been in exceeding the usual terms of canine existence. I placed it upon a cushion on the rug. I will now cut one of these pills in two, said Holmes, drawing his penknife, suiting the action to his word. One half will return to the box for future purpose. The other half I will place in this wineglass, in which is a teaspoon of water. You perceive that our friend, the doctor, is right, and that his readily dissolves. This may be very interesting, said Lestrade in an injured tone, of one who suspects he is being laughed at. I cannot see, however, what it has to do with the death of Mr. Joseph Stangerson. Patience, my friend. In patience, you will find in time that everything to do with it. I shall now add a little milk to make the mixture palatable, and on presenting it to the dog, you will find that he laps it up readily enough. As we spoke, he turned the contents of the wineglass into the saucer, and placed it in front of the terrier, who speedily licked it dry. Holmes' earnest demeanour had so far convinced us that we all sat in silence, and watched as the animal intently and expectingly some startling effects. None such appeared, however. The dog continued to lie stretched upon the cushion, breathing in laboured ways, but apparently neither the better nor worse for its draught. Holmes had taken out his watch, and as a minute followed, without result, an expression of utmost chagrin and disappointment appeared upon his features, gnawed his lip, drummed his fingers upon the table, and showed every other symptom of acute impatience. So great was his emotion that I felt sincerely sorry for him, while the two detectives smiled deliriously, by no means displeased at this check he had met. It cannot be a coincidence, he cried, in a large springing from his chair, pacing wildly down the room. It is impossible that it should be mere coincidence. The very pills which I suspect in the case of Driver are actually found through the death of Stangerson, and yet they are inert. What can this mean? Surely my whole chain of reasoning could not have been false. It is impossible, yet this wretched dog is none the worse. And I have it! I have it! With a perfect shriek of delight, he rushed to the box, cut the other pill in two, dissolved it, added in milk, and presented it to the terrier. This unfortunate creature's tongue seemed hardly to have been moistened in it before, gave a convulsing shiver in every limb, and lay as rivet and lifeless as it had been struck by lightning. Sherlock Holmes drew a long breath and wiped precipitation from his forehead. I should have had more faith, he said. I ought to know by this time that when a fact appears to be opposed to my long train of thought, it is inevitably proved to be capable of bearing some other interpretation. Of the two pills in the box, one was the most deadly poison, the other entirely harmless. I ought to have known this before I even saw the box at all. The last statement appeared to me so startlingly, that I had hardly believed that he was sober in sense. There was the dead dog. However, to prove that his conjecture had been correct, it seems that the mist in my own mind was gradually clearing away, as I began to have dim, vague perceptions of the truth. All this seems to trouble you, continued Holmes, because you failed at the beginning of the inquiry to grasp the importance of the single real clue which was presented to you. I had the good fortune to seize upon that, and everything which occurred since then has served to confirm my original supposition, and indeed was the logical sequence of it. Hence, things have been perplexed you and made which have perplexed you and made the case more obscure, and served to enlighten me, to which strengthens my conclusions. It is a mistake to confund strangers with mystery. The most commonplace crime is often the most mysterious, as it presents no new or special features from which deductions may be drawn. This murder may have been infinitely more difficult to unravel had the body of the victim simply been found lying in the roadway with any of those ounce and sensational accomplishments which have been rendered it remarkable. These strange details, far from making the case more difficult, really had the effect of making it less so. Mr. Gregson, who had been listening to this address with considerable impatience, and could contain himself no longer.
"Look here, Holmes," he said. "We're all ready to acknowledge that you're a smart man, that you have your own methods of working. We want something more than mere theory and preaching now, though. It is a case of taking the man. I have made my case out, and it seems I was wrong. Young Carpenter could not have been engaged in this second affair. Lestrade went after this man's and stranger son, and it appeared he was wrong too. You have thrown out hints here and hints there, and seem to know more than we do. But the time has come when we feel that we have the right to ask you straight how much you do know of the business. Can you name the man who did it?"
I cannot help feeling that Gregson is right, sir," remarked Lestrade. We are both tried and both failed. You have remarked more than once since I've been in the room that you had all the evidence which you require. Surely you will not withhold it any longer." Any delay in arresting the assassin, I observed, might give him time to perpetrate some fresh atrocity. Thus pressed by all of us, Holmes showed signs of irresolution. He continued to walk up and down the room with his head sunk on his chest and his brows drawn on, as was his habit when lost in thought. "There will be no more murders," he said, at last, stopping abruptly and facing. "You can put that consideration out of the question. You have asked me if I know the name of the assassin. I do. The mere knowing his name is a small thing. However, compared with the power of laying our hands upon him, this I expect very shortly to do. I have good hopes of managing even though my own arrangement. It is a thing which needs delicate handling, for we have a shrewd and a desperate man to deal with, who is supported, as I have association to prove, by another who is clever as himself. As long as this man has no idea that anyone can have a clue, there is some chance of securing him. But if he had the slightest suspicion, he would change his name and vanish in an instant among the 4,000,000 inhabitants of this great city. Without meaning to hurt either of your feelings, I am bound to say that I consider these men to be more than a match for the official force. That is why I have not asked your assistance. If I fail, I shall, of course, incur all the blame due to this omission, but that I am prepared for. At present, I am ready to present that this is the instant that I can communicate with you without endangering my own combinations. I shall do so." Gregson and Lestrade seemed to be far from satisfied by this assurance, or by the depiction of the allusion to the detective police. The former had flushed up to the roots of his flaxen hair, and the other's beady eyes glistened with curiosity and resentment. Neither of them had time to speak, however, before there was a tap at the door, and the spokesman of the street Arabs, young Wiglins, introduced his insignificant and unsavory person. "Wow, rude, Watson." "Please, sir," he said, touching his forefinger, "I have the cab downstairs." "Good boy," said Holmes blandly. "Why don't you introduce this pattern at Scotland Yard?" he continued, taking a pair of steel handcuffs from the drawer. "See how beautifully the spring works. They are fastened in an instant." "That old pattern's good enough," remarked Lestrade, "if we can only find the man to put them on." "Very good," said Holmes, smiling. "The cabman may as well help me with my boxes. Just ask him to step up, Wiglins." I was surprised to find my companion speaking as though he was about to set out on a journey, since he had not said anything to me about it. There was a small premeditation in the room, and this he pulled out and began to strap. He was busily engaging Jean at it when the cabman entered the room. It was. "Just give me the..." Sorry.
Just skim either. You'll skim. Oh wait, I think this is Holmes. Just give me the help with this buckle, cabman, he said, kneeling over his task and never turning his head. The fellow came over, and with a somewhat sullen, defiant air, put down his hands to assist. At that instant there was a sharp click, the jingling of metal, and Sherlock Holmes sprang to his feet. Gentlemen, he cried, with a flashing eye, let me introduce you to Mr. Jefferson Hope, the murderer of Enoch Drebber, and Joseph Strangerson. The whole thing occurred in a moment, so quickly that I had no time to realize it. I have a vivid recollection of that instant, of Holmes' triumphant expression, and a ring of his voice, of the cabman Daly's savage face, as he glared at the glittering handcuffs, which had appeared as if by magic upon his wrist. For a second or two, we might have been a group of statues. Then, with an inarticulate roar of fury, the prisoner wrenched himself free from Holmes' grasp and hurled himself through the window. Woodwork and glass gave way before him, but before he got quite through, Gregson, Lestrade, and Holmes sprang upon him like many staghounds. He was dragged back into the room and commenced a terrific conflict. So powerful and so fierce was he that the four of us were shaken off again and again. He appeared to have the convulsive strength of a man in an epileptic fit. His face and hands were terribly mangled by his passage through the glass, but loss of blood had no effect in this diminished resistance. It was not until Lestrade succeeded in getting his hand inside his neckcloth and half strangling him that we made realize that he was struggling with no avail. Even then, we felt no security until we had pistoned his feet as well as his hands, and then, that done, we rose to our feet, breathless and panting. We have this cab, said Sherlock Holmes. It will serve to take him to Scotland Yard. And now, gentlemen, he continued, with a pleasant smile, you have reached the end of our little mystery. You are very welcome to put any questions that you like to me now, and there is no danger that I will refuse to answer them. Whew. I think with that, we'll end. Because after this, the book is split into a second part of the mystery of the country of the saints. So until then, we'll leave this off here, a nice clear conclusion. So, I'd like to wish you all a fond farewell, and thank you for stopping by. Hey, this was quite enjoyable while reading out this mystery. I had a feeling, like the moment he asked him to bring him up, or something like that, that he was keeping an eye on, or he was making sure they'd hail the right cab driver. It didn't end up being my first theory, though. But, yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, so next time we do a reading stream, we will either continue Dracula, Frankenstein, or pick up on the second half, and thus the second mystery of this book. So, I'd like to wish you all... Oh, I already said that. Well, I guess I'll see you all next time. Very well.